Hey. So there is another small update to Leper and Hellion. One more before they go live. I skimmed this through a little bit. It says it's mostly Carcass and Berserker. And then it said this build will contain what we intend to be the final retail versions of both Leper and Hellion reworks, with the target of release next week after some final testing. So I have not looked through these patch notes yet, but I have kind of skimmed. I've at least scrolled down just to see how long they are. Not super long, but figured I'd make a video on them anyways. This is the part 2, basically, of this, of these changes, and it looks like just kind of a little bit of top off before it actually comes live next week. So, if you don't know who I am, stream every day, twitch.tv/MarinerHawk. I have like 3,800 hours, I believe, in Darkest Dungeon 2 at this point. So I have a lot of hours. I've been testing Hellion and Leper ever since they came out every day. And I have kind of my opinions on them, and then there's also the feedback that I've seen from Darkest Dungeon Discord and just in, I guess, my kind of chat in general. Overall, I mean, I think the reworks are good. I will get more into kind of like my opinions of them next week. So when this releases on live, I will have a guide alongside a video that breaks down every little change, and I will talk about basically my opinions on the path. So I made this guide. I made this guide for the last Steadfast Steward update, so it was Runaway Plague Doctor Occultist. So I made this. I showed the old skill versus the new skill. I did that for every path, and at the bottom here I talked about kind of like skills that I would run or where I would put them or path that works with, blah, blah, blah. So based on my experience kind of working with them, I will do the same thing with Hellion and Leper. That will be out as soon as this is out on live. I will drop that, and I will have that totally ready, but obviously I don't want to put a ton of time into it right now because if it changes, I might be shit out of luck. So, everything that you would need, these patch notes, my stream, my Discord, all of that you would need, the first video where I went over all of the big changes, that is all in the description, so anything you would need in there, go ahead and look in there. So, I have not seen these yet, so let's get into these again. Doesn't look like it's super long. Figured I'd get into it anyways. Okay, Leper Wanderer, updated Path Seal. Reflection plus debuff res bonus is no longer capped at 3 instances of 10%. That's kind of nice. This eliminates a situation in which newly added instances of the buff were not being applied because the stack was already filled with older instances. Shorter remaining duration allows debuff res to be pushed to new heights in a bad situation. That's pretty cool. If you're constantly getting debuff tokens, basically, then you can just kind of constantly, for the people that use Reflection, I don't know, can get a lot of debuffers. You can really stack debuffers there, so it does sound kind of funny. Minor adjustments, updated seal, Monarch's Oath rate of gain has been adjusted to 1% for normal kills, 3% for bosses. Okay, so they call bosses, like, I guess that's the term, like mini bosses, Antiquarian, Kyrogen, things like that. A little confusing to call the bosses, but I know what they mean. I wonder if, like, does Implication count in that? The canon? One of the things to test, I guess. Plus 3% for bosses and plus 6% for lair bosses. Yeah, that's good. That was a pretty common feedback, that it was kind of weird that there was no percent, or, yeah, like the mini boss kind of things, I guess. I wonder, like, Shambler's probably, like, another boss. Like, that's another probably, like, good example. Warlord. Yeah, those are probably the best ones. So they nerfed. This was 10%. They nerfed it to 6%. But this does make sense since now that you get 3% for bosses. Kind of sad that it's like 3%. But honestly, with Monarch, the stacking happens quicker than you think. 66% is what it maxes out at. It does sound like it takes a while. At least in Kingdoms. I know it's kind of more of a Kingdoms path than a Confessions path. But it does, like, it doesn't take as long as maybe it seems. As long as you're playing it, you don't have to play it like, you don't have to get him every single kill, but it is nice to, as long as you're getting like most of the kills you can, I guess it makes sense. A lot of fixing issues. Fix an issue where Purge and Purge plus token removal and the dodge removal for ignoring dodge could conflict, resulting in a seemingly random 2 to 3 tokens ultimately being removed. Innate dodge removal now has priority over the 2 positive tokens in order of execution. So this is the Purge. Yeah, the Purge that gets rid of positive tokens. So it prioritizes dodge. That's good. That's kind of what it implies anyway. So, hey, that's why they test this stuff on beta branch, because then they're like, oops, we forgot to do that. Hellion updated. Bloodlust has been reworked. Bloodlust and Bloodlust Plus now grant positive tokens based on how many winded are moved. Interesting. Bloodlust Plus now grants Execution 2 to melee skills for 3 turns unconditionally. When you use it? Or is that like a passive thing? Anyways. Bloodlust has been revised to allow more flexible timing of use for benefits, as well as more direct incorporation into the token system. The execution option remains as mastery, but is no longer tied to winded for duration. Oh, unconditionally means... Okay. Unconditionally means it doesn't matter on winded. Okay. I was confused why they threw that in there. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus updated to better reflect that they generate winded per target hit. If it bleeds... If it bleeds and if it bleeds plus, now increase the duration of the bleed by 1 turn if the target has combo. If it bleeds, the bleed buffed. That's nice. I know if it bleeds kind of... I don't know. It did kind of fall by the wayside a little bit. This has been an ability that's been pretty underwhelming through the entirety of kind of Darkest Dungeon 2. So I think people have been kind of expecting it to get buffed a little bit. I don't know. There's like only kind of so much you can do with it. I know a lot of people want If It Bleeds to be used in rank 1. I don't necessarily think that that's the answer, personally, but... Raucous Revelry and Raucous Revelry Plus cooldown increased from 1 to 2. Fuck. Raucous Revelry was deemed quite powerful, but we'd rather use a cooldown than change the interesting array of positive effect device. Fuck. That probably counts on Carcass too. Fuck. Dude, I love spamming Revelry. Fuck. That probably counts on Carcass too, doesn't it? I don't think Carcass uses a special... Shit. I'm not crazy about that. But that's because I tend to use Revelry a lot. I don't know... I mean, it is for... When you master it, it upgrades... Or it heals everybody on the team too. So that is... Like, the justification from 1 to 2 makes sense. I don't know if I'm crazy about that. That might be one of those things that maybe I'm just mad about because it hurts me personally. I think I get it. I mean, now that it heals 2, and yeah, I think it is kind of cool that it heals everybody. Unmastered is going to feel pretty shitty, though. It doesn't do that heal 2. Not crazy about that. I think it's probably deserved. It's probably deserved, but I'm not crazy about it. I'll see how it feels. Path Seal now briefly describes a Window's path. This path no longer receives fatigue for hitting Death's Door and Kingdoms. I was curious whether they were gonna do something like this, because on one hand, it's kind of tacky. It'd just be like, this gets this certain upgrade that nobody else gets. But like, it does make sense with Ravager. And honestly, you could argue, okay, so I would say, I think they should do this for Arsonist too. Although maybe it doesn't, like the whole thing with this, with Ravager is because she wants to hit Death's Door. You could make an argument from like, I don't know, I guess a theme standpoint that, it would make sense if she wouldn't get fatigued. So maybe you can't make that same argument with Arsonist. And maybe the reason that this would be on Ravager and not Arsonist is just the fact that Arsonist getting fatigue when hitting Death's Door just like kind of sucks. But like getting fatigue on Ravager, you could argue is a positive, because the percentage that you don't want to be at Ravager is like 50% health to 100% health. And like, here's where you want to be, here's where you not want to be. And then fatigue like lowers that part that you don't want to be. So technically fatigue kind of is a buff. If you think about it, it's obviously a little scarier because it lowers your max health just for like getting hit and stuff. But honestly, fatigue is, you could argue, is a positive for her. So I guess that's why this doesn't happen. I mean, either way, even if you want to like farm fatigue, quote unquote, on Ravager, it's still pretty easy to do if you have her in your main party. Just like don't switch her out or whatever. I'm kind of surprised they did that, but it does kind of make sense also. I would like to see them do the same for Arsonist, just based on Arsonist just does not feel good in Kingdoms because of the fatigue aspect. You know, is it the hugest deal? Probably not, but I would like to see them do with Arsonist, even if maybe it doesn't make sense as nearly as much. Adrenaline Rush and Adrenaline Rush Plus passive has been reworked, now removing all dots and granting stealth when hitting Death's Door once per battle. Granting stealth when hitting Death's Door. Okay, interesting. Okay. I have Adrenaline Rush, from what I've seen on Ravager, is the safer version. Like, if you're going, like, hard and you're really, really leaning into the path of Ravager, you're probably going Bloodlust because it puts her on Death's Door. This is, like, kind of the safer way of playing Ravager, if that makes sense. So it makes sense that Adrenaline Rush would get that. Adrenaline Rush now grants plus 10 bleed res per winded remove. Now gets plus 10% dot res per winded remove. That's interesting. I wonder if that opens up. Does that open up a sort of like? I mean, it's if you're playing Ravager with Adrenaline Rush, you're kind of doing like a not like a. You're playing somewhere in between Wanderer and then like Damage Ravager. Damage Ravager meaning like she jumps herself to Death's Door and then bounces off of it. So it's kind of like you're playing like somewhere in between, kind of like a Wanderer adjacent. So I wonder if this gives her like a tank element. It is kind of nice, dot res. I wonder if that gives like a tank element. I'll have to look at that. Adrenaline Rush is passive and Bloodlust active. Achieve very similar goals, so we opted to have Adrenaline Rush passive, provide a different kind of protection. It's also eliminated some confusing edge cases where the passive effect could be construed as not working. Some additional dot res was added to Adrenaline Rush to help make up for the pack, provides much less overall healing compared to Wander, since the Ravager often wants to remain at very low health. Yeah, this is I kind of like Adrenaline Rush as a sort of secondary playstyle as far as Ravager, where it's like again somewhere in between Wanderer and then like the psychopath damage kind of way of playing Ravager. I admittedly haven't a lot of experience with that, but I do wonder what that would play like. Bloodlust damage reduced to 7+7 for 5+5. So this went from 28 to 20. Pretty damn. Oh, just at the base version down. Oh, okay. So you can still master. Okay, you can still master it if you want the higher damage. Okay, kind of makes sense. At least makes you have to put a mastery point into it. Kind of makes sense. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus targets range change from 1-2-3 to AoE 3-4. I think people kind of liked. I think people kind of liked that it hit 3. I'm kind of surprised that they changed that. I mean, 3-4 is still good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a little surprised. Maybe it's different on other paths. I'm a little surprised though. I mean, I guess this is just Ravager. I guess this doesn't really make a big difference. So this gives her a way to kind of mess up the backline, depending on how much damage it does, I guess. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus now no longer ignore block. Forward move reduced from 2 to 1. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus no longer require less than 3 winded to use. Now require less than 50 HP. Okay, now gain plus 50% damage while in Death's Door. No longer removes all block, and then the damage is increased a little bit. Basically, the purpose of this high-end rolling is basically to change the bigger change that this makes if they just add like 1 damage to the top end is it changes the crit value. So it means with the old value, the 3-6, a 3-6 crits for 9, a 3-7 crits for 11. So it's kind of like seems like kind of a weird change, but I think the main reason when they do little things like that is just change the crit. So this goes from 12 to what is that, 14? I mean, if you considering crit tokens, you can guarantee crit tokens technically if you want. It's relatively easy to get crit tokens, so that does make a bigger difference than maybe it thinks. We feel that Ravager's version of Yop did a fine job at dealing with block tokens. So Breakthrough has been redone to give the Ravager a low health alternative to Howling End that enjoys increased reach and area of effect instead of Howling End's single target firepower. I think that kind of makes sense. Yeah, because Yop does damage on this path. Because of that, it pops block tokens. I think that makes sense. Yeah, that's... I'd have to look at that skill, which I will, but... It's an extra thing to add in. It's like a blow up the backline. That's pretty funny, actually. Oh, I bet you could fit that in there. Okay, so we got Berserker. This path now ignores winded for 1 turn whenever it lands a crit. This was just with Bloodlust, I believe, if you had Bloodlust. So now it's on the path itself. The +1 bleed duration dealt. Health threshold has been lowered from 50 to 33. This path now gets plus 10% crit while under 66% health. That's a crazy buff for how little, like, how high the health is. That's kind of crazy. So it's kind of a crit path too. Now, sort of, or crit. I mean, not crit path, but crit. I don't know, sort of crit adjacent. Winded damage penalty increased from -1 to -2. No longer grants -1 bleed dealt and no. Oh, it reduces bleed res piercing by -10%. So I know this one in particular, I saw this one was like kind of a common feedback that this was like a little too mean. Kind of agreed. You know, I think Winded is not super bad on the other paths. Like, it sucks, but it's not super bad. This one was definitely the worst of it, but I still think it kind of fit within that bracket, those brackets of what I would consider for balanced, I guess. But I mean, I understand the argument though. I don't know. Now reduces bleed piercing by -10% per token. I don't know if I like that better, to be honest. I mean, at least you don't, because with the issue with this Winded is you could get bricked. So with 2 Winded, I believe it was with 2 Winded and Unmastered Breakthrough, you're doing 0 bleed because it only did 2 bleeds, so you would have to master it. So like the issue is, yeah, that like getting bricked, where your abilities go from bleeding a little bit to not bleeding at all, which is actually a big change. So at least this adds like an RNG element to it. It's probably better. I don't know if I'm crazy about it personally, but I get it. And it's probably a little bit. And at the end of the day, like raising something that has 20% bleed res to 30%, it's not really the end of the world. I think it's still pretty nasty though. Winded is still pretty nasty on this path. Winded is primarily punitive in nature and needs to reflect that for the path. I don't know what that means. So we opted to make it more difficult to apply bleed rather than reduce the amount dealt because there are more readily available counters to that. Trinkets, combats, crits, etc. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah, because it's much easier to combat that or yeah, counter that than it is to counter this. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes more sense. That's probably better. Bleed out is not a path skill. Bleed out and bleed out plus launch ranks increase from 1 to 1, 2. Damage nerf. The Berserker now has her own version of bleed out that exchanges some of the upfront damage for better launch ranks, allowing for more flexible placement in parties. Yeah, that's probably good. It allows you to basically, yeah, decide how you're gonna what abilities you're gonna run, what you're gonna run there. That makes sense. That's probably a good change. Anything that only goes from, I mean, it still only hits rank 1 though, right? Yeah. I mean, whatever. Because it says launch rank, so that's her rank. I mean, still. I mean, you know, still good. Abilities that can be used from rank 1 and then hit rank 1 are inherently going to be kind of restrictive, so that's maybe not going to feel the greatest in general, so I get that. Bloodlust is no longer a path skill. The new Wanderer version of the skill benefits Berserker just as much, and the overly complex crit benefit has been rolled into the path passive. Full health benefits, while the ability to ignore Wind has been made an innate path effect. Yeah, so that makes sense. I was curious what they were going to do with Bloodlust, just based on the fact that they moved this into, they just moved it into the path. That's interesting. This is going to be, this comment now ignores Winded for 1 turn whenever it lands a crit. That plus the 10% crit while under 66% health. Because again, 66% pretty easy to fall under. I guess pretty easy to fall under, and it's not even really risky. So that is really interesting. That it's a little bit more of like a crit path now. I mean, plus 10% crit. I mean, don't underestimate that. That's a lot of crit to get just for free. So that does give an interesting kind of extra niche to Berserker, other than just be bleed path. Now it's bleed and crit path kind of. That is pretty cool, I think. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus target ranks change from AoE 2-3 to AoE 1-2. I'll read into this. I don't like that right off the bat, but we'll read into that. Breakthrough damage increased from 3-4 to 3-5. No longer reduces bleed res. That was just an extra part of the ability. Crit increased. So Breakthrough Plus has a 10% crit, and then you add this, it's a 20% crit. That's pretty crazy. This provides a better identity for the skill when compared to bleed out and if it bleeds, providing a single point of overlap in the target ranks instead of matching if it bleeds completely. I actually liked Berserker as it hits the middle ranks. I actually thought that was kind of interesting. But the issue that I ran into, so let's think of some of the abilities that move forward. At least, here, I'll say 2 of the abilities that move forward. Holy Lance, which also can't hit rank 1, and Ransack, which can't hit rank 1. So Ransack, between if you're dancing Berserker with Holy Lance or you're dancing it with Ransack, that doesn't hit rank 1. So there were like neither of those hit rank 1. So you were kind of running into this scenario where you can't hit rank 1 with like your dancing team, and obviously there's like, you know, Duelist Advance, Razor's Wit. There's obviously a lot of them that can't hit rank 1. But that was an issue that I ran into. I wonder if that's what they took into account with that. Is basically, I mean, Holy Lance is kind of like your quintessential or your best move forward ability in this game. I do wonder if they thought about that. So at least break through and hit 1 and 2. And plus there's always gonna be a target in 1 or 2. Like, it might be a corpse, but there's always gonna be a target at 1 or 2. So anything that hits 1 and 2 is fundamentally gonna be a little better than 2 and 3 just based on that. Because again, you're running into some, if you run into some areas with like some situations like Kyurgen or something, that Kyurgen's the only one alive and it's sitting in rank 1, and Breakthrough and Holy Lance can't do anything about it. That's the issue that I ran into. That could just be a comp issue, but I'm just kind of spitballing. I'm sure that's probably better. I did like the AoE that hits 2 and 3 because there's not a lot of abilities that hit 2 and 3 in this game. It's kind of just Harvest and flashing daggers. But Breakthrough had the moving aspect to it, so I'm sure I'm sure this is better. I still like the 2-3 hit, but I am sure I'm pretty confident that this change is just better. I did really like reducing the bleed res. It kind of goes against what now is the winded token, but I did like reducing the dot res too. But there's other ways to do that, I guess. Hellion S plus no longer ignore damage modifiers. Hellion plus now crit. Hellion plus will now remove all bleed from the target on a crit. Okay. We hear you about the Keystone skill feeling unsatisfying since it can't crit on a path of value crits. We made some adjustments. It's now subject to all damage modifiers, good or bad, and the bonus damage from bleed is factored into crits. In order to keep the skill's power in line, crits will now remove the bleed from the target. Oh, right, this is just crit, right? Okay. But I believe, if I remember correctly, it's got a 15% crit chance. Maybe it's, I know it does on other paths. We'll look at it. I know it does on other paths. Maybe it's different on Berserker. I don't think it is. So even then, that under 66%, 25% crit chance, so still a pretty good chance that's going to remove all the bleed. But they tend to like, they did the same thing with Tempest, where Tempest Revenge, if it crits, it removes all the negative tokens. So basically, you can either do like damage, you can either do good damage with things like the bleed in this path, or the bleed on Hellion that improve it. But as soon as you do that, like top damage, there's got to be a downside. And I agree with that too. They've added that. They added that to Tempest Revenge. They added to this too. That's probably good. Yeah, just to keep the power in line. That makes sense. Iron Swan and Iron Swan Plus now remove Berserker back 1. Iron Swan Plus now pull the target forward 1. And now applies combo and crit. Iron Swan's been adjusted to provide synergy with other bleed launch and target ranks. Yeah, so the idea basically is that you would break through something along the lines of like Breakthrough Iron Swan. Yeah, something like that. Breakthrough Iron Swan. It gives like toe-to-toe synergy. I forget if Hellion moves back on this path or not. I don't think it does. I think it's just, or does it? I don't remember. First, let's look at what did I want to look here? Oh, I will look. Let's look. I assume Raucous.
Beneath bloodlust and fury.
Is the same. Ah, it is. The 2-turn cooldown. I'm not crazy about that, but I understand. Not crazy about that, but I understand. Ravager. Okay, so equipping the skill. Like a death's head, but it's like a death's head. Yeah, so this is Adrenaline Rush is for a little more on the left there for in Ravager. Adrenaline Rush is a little more for the the Wanderer, like slightly different than Wanderer, but not quite full send into Bloodlust kind of way. And this gives an interesting like tank and survivability aspect to it. I do think it's interesting. I don't know what scenario you would want to play that. I feel like if you're gonna play Ravager, I don't know. I guess it's preference. I feel like if you're gonna play Ravager, you might as well lean 100% into the path, but. But there's a scenario where you can... It's a good enough path, I think, without having to play, like, 100% into it. Oh, this is... Yeah, the Bloodless Wanderer thing. Oh, okay, that's what I wanted to look at. On the right there where it says Wanderer. Okay, so... Interesting. I was thinking it was random tokens. It's not random token. It depends on your winded. Okay, so I'm assuming these are stacking. So if you have 3 winded and Bloodlust, that gives you... I'm assuming... that stacks. So it would give you a crit token, a strength token, and a speed token. That's kind of crazy, actually. Maybe it doesn't work like that, but I'm assuming it does. Because I'm assuming it does work like that. That's kind of nuts. Wow, that's kind of nuts. A speed, a crit, and a strength token. If that's how that works, that's kind of nuts. Wow. Kind of crazy. Bleed out. Yep, the launch ranks are 1 and 2 on this path. Kind of funny. That's the only thing it changes. I guess it lowers the damage a little bit, but it's kind of funny. Breakthrough hitting 1, 2. Yeah, so it removes on crit. That makes sense. This one does move back. Okay. So you can use either Iron Swan as a move back, or you can... you can use Howling End as a move back. So you could do, like... You can do, Breakthrough Iron Swan, Breakthrough Iron Swan. I guess until the rank 4 is dead, and then you can do, like, Berserker, Howling End. So it gives her... It does give her a dancing aspect of it, which I kind of... Which I was saying as I was going through the, like, the initial patch notes, is that something I've heard that's, like, a, solid idea? Is, like, giving her a kind of, like, a dance kind of movement aspect to it. So she still has that. And it does give her... If you want to dance her with 2 and 3, which is the way that I was playing her... I don't know if I'd still play her like that. It does at least give you access to bleed out now. So that's kind of cool. It does only hit 1 rank, but it gives her a little more flexibility. So I think that's good. I think that's interesting. What else was in here? Anything I missed? Still haven't looked at Carcass yet. Okay, so let's look at Carcass. Adrenaline Rush is no longer a pass skill. Given that Carcass can draw fire, it felt better to let her access the Wanderer version for some hefty recovery. Yop is now a pass skill. Ooh, Yop and Yop Plus grant 2 taunt. It's back. They brought it back. They brought it back. Gotta have a fat cooldown probably, though. Yop and Yop Plus do not ignore or remove stealth, do not grant strength for crit, apply an additional weak on crit. Okay. Okay. So they changed it. Interesting. So they changed it back to the old... Basically the old path Carcass. Interesting. Yop cooldown increased from 1 to 2. Yeah, increased from 0 to 2, right. The Carcass now has a unique version of Yop that has the potential to dish out a large number of weak tokens while attracting attention. Yeah, that makes sense. They're kind of moving away from taunts a little bit. Or constant taunts, I should say. But like anything that grants taunt kind of has a cooldown. You can combo this, or you can have this also with like Pristine Lore. The combat item that gives taunt on hit, so that's pretty good. You can use it in combination with that, and then that kind of brings her back to old kind of Carcass. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus now ignore Winded. Breakthrough and Breakthrough Plus cooldown increase from 1 to 2. There's an offensive skill that is also divesting the Carcass of her Winded. Makes sense to get the full damage. However, cooldown has been slightly increased to help account for how quickly she can build up Winded against bosses. Prevent chaining breakthroughs potent. Debuff too rapidly. This is the breakthrough that applies Winded to a target. So it makes sense that it ignores Winded. That's kind of good. Howling End Plus now converts any block that Carcass has into Block Plus. It'll give you a chance to shore up any block you have before sacrificing the wind that generates it. Oh, I guess it's only upgraded. That's a loaded fucking ability, man. That is crazy. We'll look at that, but that's a loaded fucking ability. Dev note, this will take the chance to shore up a block. That is interesting, though. I do like that convert. I wish... I want them to do that to Poet Ruin. Because Poet Ruin... It converts block to strength, which who gives a shit? It's strength. But it converts regen to crit. So Poet, my issue with Poet right now, which I'll get into when I get into like the guides and stuff next week. My issue with Poet is that it's more offensive than defensive. So I wish they would do that with Ruin. They would have Ruin convert block to block plus. To give it like a defensive. Son of a bitch. Well, interesting that Carcass gets that though. Iron Swan and Iron Swan Plus now grant a speed token. This makes it usable at full winded to quickly flow into breakthrough, howling in, or similar skills as follow-up despite the speed penalty. Interesting. This also moves back. So yeah, that's why they're talking about like breakthrough, howling in. Toe-to-toe and Toe-to-toe Plus now grant one winded. Toe-to-toe Plus grant additional winded if the target is size 2 or longer or larger. Toe-to-toe has been adjusted to provide some self-sufficiency in its effect via winded generation, also allowing faster generation of winded while fighting larger singular targets such as bosses. So it's Toe-to-toe Plus, so it's only mastered. Interesting. Okay, so let's look at Carcass. Yeah, this is a fucking loaded ability. This is crazy. I mean, I guess it is only mastered. Carcass, it does 10 to 18. Ignores block, at least mastered, and converts her block to block plus. That's a crazy ability. That is a crazy efficient ability. I haven't really been using Iron Swan on Carcass. Oh, maybe I should. Maybe I should. You can give her like a healing combat item or something, and then she would go. She would go last and then first. So that honestly might not be a bad idea. I kind of liked the spammable Yop, to be honest. But I think this probably makes a little more sense. And it does have a master has a really high crit chance, 15%. So there's like a 15% on 2 targets. So there's still a really good chance that you're gonna get that extra application of the winded. Yeah, I kind of like it more as a spammable ability personally. But this is pretty good. I feel like it's pretty good. It's more of like a instead of like an efficient skill, a good skill you use often, it's now a really efficient skill that you use with a cooldown. I would have to see how to play this. This I'd have to like get into. I'd have to like get into to see how to play like toe-to-toe. Because it doesn't immobilize, so like you could pretty easily do some like dancing stuff where you do like toe-to-toe, and then like Holy Lance or somebody that moves forward and then breakthrough to hand out the winded tokens. I'll have to like kind of sit down and kind of look at that. Exactly how I would want to play that. Yeah, I'll have to play that for a little bit. I am playing Carcass in my current run, so I'll be able to test that out. Yeah, because now that you can't Yop just off cool like freely, basically. There's got to be other ways to get winded, so I guess toe-to-toe is kind of a must, huh? I mean, it adds initial taunt. Toe-to-toe might be kind of a must. Because you would like, if you Yop, you hit 2 targets. The Revelry. Oh, the Revelry cooldown too. Yeah, so you really have to run like a full like ways of getting winded. So you'd like bleed out, Yop, toe-to-toe, and Revelry. Like, it seems like you almost do have to run like 4 of them. I mean, I guess you could take one off and then run like Iron Swan instead. Interesting. So there'll be like a few different ways you want to play this, I guess. You really gotta lean into it. It's a crazy efficient ability though. Yeah, she gets it per winded anyways. That's kind of nuts. Huh. We'll have to see how that plays out. Is there anything interesting in here? I do not think so. Dead of Night, Dead of Night Plus now tagged as heal skills. Any interesting fixes? Does not. Now allow inventory to be open during siege selection. That's good. The game like locks you into doing the sieges, which makes sense. We now load player collection tutorials and narration JSONs. Switching profiles regardless of the profile state. Fixes the issue where modded profiles will not save tutorial academic view and the other game history properly. I had this issue. It wasn't the end of the world, but it was like just that damn red exclamation point keep popping up saying that you haven't unlocked something yet. When a damage range for a skill has a minimum value of 0, we no longer show the preview differently if the random number generator picks 0 damage. If the random number generator picks 0 damage and the skills occur, the damage will be adjusted to the maximum value instead of saying it's 0. Other than that last sentence, I don't really know what that means, but that's okay. Well, I'm sure I'll see it in game. Some interesting changes in this. One thing I'm a little surprised, I guess, if you want to call it that, is I know there was a lot of people were like not happy about like the free actions aspect of things. Um, Free actions mostly meaning like you press revenge, but you still get a turn. You press withstand, but you still get a turn. You press bloodlust, but you still get a turn. I'm kind of. It looks like they kind of dug their feet in for that stuff, which I thought that free action stuff was kind of overblown. I mean, I understand the argument. It just makes it like things really efficient. So you just press a button without any downside, when usually the downside is you losing your turn. I don't hate it though. I'm definitely a bit surprised they didn't change any of that. So it looks like looks like that's here to stay. Because they did say build will contain what we intend to be the final retail versions. So there probably will not be any changes. There'll probably be 1 or 2 changes, but probably not anything super big. So that's definitely kind of interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll see how this plays. It looks like pretty much, for the most part, some quality of life updates. If it bleeds, or sorry, Berserker becoming more of a crit path is kind of interesting. Revelry nerf probably deserved. Oh, that feels bad for me though. Oh, that's gonna feel bad. I love spamming that ability, but probably deserved. Yeah, so I will be continuing to test this stuff out. Please subscribe and stuff. Check out my stream. Stop by my stream and say, hey, I watched your video. I appreciate it. I stream at like 9 p.m. PST, which is, you know, look up whatever that in your time zone is. But either way, I appreciate it. I hope you all have a nice rest of the day. I will have the Hellion Leper guide out by next week when it drops out on live. You'll be able to watch that video and you'll be able to learn all this stuff and learn it all at once. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.